Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. This is the 42nd edition of the live Q&A Hangouts. More Hangout than Q&A recently. Where logic and reason rule the day regardless of the topic. Conspiracies, science versus scientism, paranormal, Hollywood celebrities, anything and everything goes. Welcome, I am Ion's Cat. We are live. Live means live. 42nd edition. Some of the lives were missing, so I did re-premiere the live. So if it says premiere, it's not live, but live is live. So, welcome everybody. Welcome, Aaron. I am Ion's Cat. You haven't been here in a while, right? Clark Rice, you've also been absent for a couple streams. One of them, we were going over more Roller Jam. Whether it's Roller Jam, Steven Seagal, the most accomplished human in the history of humanity, or many others. We haven't talked about David Hasselhoff in a while, possibly the second most prolific Hollywood individual in history, perhaps. And, of course, we talk about Alex Jones, pro wrestling, and anything and everything in between with logic and reason at the forefront. If you want to help support Mindshock and logic and reason, returning to a world where it is quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis called podcaster request. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. If you're not getting the updates through YouTube, because that is pretty sketchy, the YouTube servers clearly cannot be trusted, you could even join the free Patreon tier, and you will get updates through there. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunks of any kind, leave them in the comments section, or if you were at this here live, of course, drop them in the live chat. I'll try to get to all of them. You can also help support the channel by becoming a YouTube member right here on YouTube. So what will be the first order of business?
Let's get crazy. Let's get crazy.
I mean, Lionheart really is a lot funnier than people give it credit for. I mean, this is straight comedy. Look at their expressions here. Clark says, I saw an old Unsolved Mysteries episode about Lincoln's assassination. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole if there ever was one. Any opinion on the alleged faking of James Wilkes Booth's death? Oh man, I actually did have a Lincoln podcast planned. A lot of people don't know that he's one of the worst presidents ever. I mean, you know, obviously Obama tried to give him a run for his money, but yeah, I mean, Lincoln was pretty bad. I'm Ion's Cat asks, is the Iran-Israel war real or just some fake II thing? So are you asking if Israel is real? Israel real? Is it real? Israel? Is Israel real? Is it real? I don't know, man. I don't know. Flapop says, I made it. Tell me what I missed in 3 words or less. We just started. Missed practically nothing. B. Carter says, hey, Bruce, have you seen any of Darius J. Wright's stuff? Let me see if I have or not. Name does not ring a bell, but I've seen so much material. Perhaps I have. Let me just look him up real quick. No, I don't believe I have. I will add it to the list. I Am Ion's Cat says, have you released the Mandela Effect show? Not yet. Still compiling. I was actually just working on it earlier today. But part one should be, I know I've said this so many times. I will be doing a live Mandela series shortly. Probably within the next week or so. If not tomorrow. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll be able to do it tomorrow, but within the next week or so. Bat Dad said, loving the analysis of Witsit and not a Professor Dave. Man, the amount of goofs that chill for so-called Professor Dave, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, are they all paid? I mean, that's a good question. Yes, Flat Bob. The Mandela Effect will drop before this coming Christmas. It'll definitely drop before the end of the summer. I might even do it tomorrow. I might do part one tomorrow. Don't hold me to that. I don't know. But I have part one will be coming very soon. Like I said, I was just working on some, compiling some of the clips today. I had actually a lot on a different hard drive, and I'm having trouble finding some of the older receipts which really prove the point about Mandela. You know what was we were just talking about Mandela Effect. Was it yesterday? Or on one of the recent lives, I thought that Mark Kerr had died, and it was one of the greatest tragedies in MMA because I remember following MMA in its heyday, and I could have sworn he was dead. And now he's appearing on podcasts. So what are we starting with today? So many good choices. Flat Bob says, hey Bruce, do you have more UFO footage? I love that stuff. Oh man, that's on an older drive. I actually collected UFO footage for decades. I probably had an 8-hour... Man, I wonder... I probably had an 8-hour compilation of UFO footage. I Am Ion's Cat says, Bruce, what is your take on Bob Lazar? I did a whole episode on Bob Lazar. Have you not seen it? I mean, I'll give you the quick summary, but I thought most people had seen it. It's one of the best episodes I ever did. I mean, I went deep. We went deep into Bob Lazar, covering every angle, including his mysterious, the death of one of his wives, Hell's Angels connections, and all this weird, bizarre stuff in his life before he ever even went to Area 51. I mean, there was some shady stuff going on with that individual for years before the UFO stuff. So, yeah. But, yeah, if you want the quick synopsis, if I had to guess, I'm just guessing here. I don't claim anything is true or untrue. Obviously, the Mindshock motto is the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. If I had to guess, I would guess he's saying what he believes to be the truth. I think the U.S. government might have been testing media leaks to see what would happen, possibly as part of an overarching Operation Bluebeam. So if they're going to fake an alien invasion, the Grand Deception, the Great Deception, whatever, to usher in a new world order, they might want to test how UFO and extraterrestrial information would be leaked in the response to the leak. So they might have told Lazar that these are genuine extraterrestrial craft just to see what would happen, to see if he would leak it to the media, and if he would, exactly how the media would respond. So that's the quick one. I think most of what he says seems like it could be plausible. There was only one issue with his story that I had. He said he was being fired upon. If you guys want, I'll play the clip right now. Let's play the clip right now. You open Pandora's box with Bob Lazar. So let's get into Bob Lazar then. Let me see if I can find the clip.
absolutely no physiological indication
on some of the other projects that were going on there. Supposedly, the information, now this isn't something that I determined, it's something I was told, that the crafts originated from a planet that orbited the Zeta Reticuli star system, Zeta Reticuli 1.
And, like, you know,
In this exclusive interview,
and,
Tour facility is told that I was hired to replace one of a couple people that were killed while working on one of the reactors from one of the crafts. Apparently they, for whatever reason, cut open an operating reactor.
Bob says Uncle Nate was born, even denied the simple fact he was born there.
Lazar, but
UFO researchers that there is a secret government site used in the action.
The side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's to disguise it.
More than one.
Yeah. The hangars are all connected together, and there are large bay doors between each one. And there were 9 total that I saw, each one being different. Like they had the assortment.
easy, but
period of probation. Number 2, you have no contact with prosecutors.
it's like this, like, you know, huge head in the
Hydrogen.
the Hoff definitely likes his motorcycles. I mean, he uses them in music videos as well. Old photos here. These are quite fascinating. Like to front a line of workout videos.
I was essentially paralyzed with fear, and I waited.
Are you aware of this?
As a result of going public, have there been any attempts made on your life?
One day when I was getting on Interstate 15, driving down Charleston Boulevard, a car came up alongside of me, and I thought he was just trying to race me to get on the freeway. This was after I had left the project. It was a white, boxy-looking car. Exactly what make and model, I don't know. But I accelerated to get on the freeway to go fast, and there was a gunshot, and the back of the car was hit, and I skidded off into the median. And I stopped, and I was frightened, and I just stood there because I thought the guy was going to be alongside of me and just shoot me. I had nothing to do. I was essentially paralyzed with fear, and I waited there, and then nothing else happened. And do I know it was a government agent trying to kill me? No. Could it have been a drive-by shooting? Maybe. So was it? I mean, it was an attempt on my life, but by who specifically? I don't know. Though I was threatened before I had left. They threatened my wife's life and my life, so I can only put 2 and 2 together and say that they were kind of pissed at me.
So, I don't know how many people have heard this particular story that Lazar had given. So, Lazar supposedly passed every single lie detector test. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything anyway, but this is the only story that seems like it potentially could be, I hate to use this phrase, far-fetched. Again, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not like these coincidence theorists goofs. I'm not saying Lazar's lying. I'm just saying that's kind of an interesting story that his and his wife's lives were threatened, and then someone actually took a shot at him on the interstate. So that's probably the most difficult to believe story. For me, that's harder to believe for me. I know I'm appealing to incredulity fallacy right here. That's harder for me to believe than he was told he was working on extraterrestrial technology to reverse engineer it. Now, whether he was or he wasn't, that's a separate issue. But I don't find it strange. I think it's very believable that he was told that this was extraterrestrial technology. I Am Ion's Cat says, I'm old enough to remember when Lazar was live on TV dropping his story via Nap. Yeah, me too. Me too. I followed that. Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't really have an issue with most of what he said, but this one particular story about the attempt on his life, I don't know what it is, but I just find this particular story kind of strange, as well as the Hells Angels connections before he ever worked at Area 51. Now, was he selected specifically because there was some funny business going on? Like, let's look at the receipts here. I went over the Hells Angel materials here, because a lot of people don't know this, and he was involved, I think, in more than one, not involved as in, I don't know if he perpetrated it, but he was connected to certain murders. And, yeah, it's just really strange. Lazar's history is very strange, to say the least. So, Bob and his then-wife Carol moved to Los Alamos, New Mexico, May 1982. And Carol apparently had some kind of criminal history. So, what's kind of interesting here, I don't know if I even went over this in the Bob Lazar podcast, but if people are interested, we can go a little deeper here. One of Lazar's childhood friends was Alan Rothberg, and he was interviewed July 16th, 2022, in reference to Lazar. Now, this guy, Rothberg, said that they did all these weird chemical experiments with fireworks, etc., and when they were kids. And he said, so Alan said that Lazar actually became a professional fireworks demonstrator. And he was the technician licensed by counties or states to do fireworks displays. So apparently Lazar was in California for a certain period of time. And he said that Lazar was involved in some kind of video production as well as CGI. He also said that he said he was working on films and music videos in Los Angeles. So I wonder if there's an MK Ultra component to Bob Lazar, and he was scouted and possibly even MK Ultra'd way before he ever even got to Los Alamos or Area 51. He said he was involved in shooting some videos of the band Blondie. Or Blondie... solo performer? I'm totally drawing a blank on Blondie. So Blondie was a rock band. The singer was Debbie Harry. So I don't know if they don't know that Blondie... I mean, whenever I heard reference to Blondie, it's the band, not a single performer. But anyway, Rothberg says that she was shooting up heroin, Lazar said that she was shooting up heroin in the back of the film studio or in the lot. He said that was the only name he brought up. But he said that he was involved in other shoots. Now, who's ready for another mind shock here? I mean, this is going to be crazy. I can't believe we didn't go this deep in the Lazar podcast. Perhaps there was an episode 2. We're about to get a huge mind shock regarding Bob Lazar. I don't think anybody has reported this thus far. This might be a mind shock exclusive. Who's ready? So I'm not 100% sure this has been definitively verified. This is coming from Rothberg. So it looks like, This is weird. Is there 100, has his family tree been 100% verified? Because Rothberg here is making a claim about Bob Lazar's sister. But I can't find a definitive reference to the existence of his sister or whether he even has one. But get this. According to Rothberg, Bob Lazar's sister was in Hollywood. She was engaged to the lead on Battlestar Galactica, the original show. Now, Rothberg is actually not defending Lazar here. He said that he had no evidence. He said Lazar was bragging about working on, like, these Hollywood projects, but he didn't see any actual real evidence. Now, the interviewer's kind of pressing him, trying to say, like, is he lying, whatever. But here, the 78 Battlestar Galactica, there were a few different leads, so I'm not sure who he's referring to. Is it Richard Hatch as Captain Apollo? Dirk Benedict as Lieutenant Starbuck? Lauren Green? Commander Adama? I mean, I don't know which lead, but Rothberg here actually says there was one piece of evidence. He said that Bob Lazar's sister was engaged to one of the leads on Battlestar Galactica. Oh, he gives his name here. Richard Hatch. So, Richard Hatch is the main lead on Battlestar Galactica. Is everybody still following here? So this is Lazar's Lost Hollywood Years. His sister, who I haven't been able to find definitive confirmation that she even exists on the interwebs, his sister was engaged to the main lead in Battlestar Galactica, and Rothberg here, who says that Lazar never provided proof of any of his tall tales in Hollywood, he said the only piece of evidence he had was that he actually met Richard Hatch, the lead of Battlestar Galactica, and Lazar's sister, and that she was actually engaged to him. He said that's the only thing verifiable because he actually met the guy and Lazar's sister, and I guess they were acting engaged. So, whatever the case may be there. This is kind of crazy. This is kind of crazy. Who knew that Bob Lazar's sister was engaged to Richard Hatch of Battlestar Galactica? I'm trying to find... See, there was no, like, TMZ back then. So it's kind of hard to verify this stuff. And I haven't found any other reference to this other than Rothberg here. And again, Rothberg is actually not saying that this interview is not really, it's not really favorable per se to Lazar. Like he says he doesn't know anything about his degrees or college or anything. So here's a question from the interviewer. When you visited him, he wasn't going to school or anything like that? Alan says, no, the topic never came up. It was never something I thought to ask about. And he certainly wasn't saying, I gotta go to class, see you later. I didn't even know he'd gone to any college ever. So again, Rothberg is kind of slanting anti-Lazar, but he admitted that the only verifiable connection that he saw of any kind is when he met Richard Hatch, the star of the original Battlestar Galactica show, and Bob Lazar's sister, who he was engaged to. What does everybody make of this? Welcome Scott Steiner in the house here. B. Carter says, isn't it kind of weird that his last name is Lazar, basically laser? Well, also, yeah, Lazarus, as somebody brought up. I am Ion's cat here. Lazar, short for Lazarus, who's associated with the miracle of resurrections, or the resurrection of lost technology. Well, everything about Lazar doesn't make any sense. I am Ion's cat says, the only story which sounds more plausible than Lazar, in my opinion, is the Annie Jacobsen story of Area 51, that the U.S. government modified human children to look like aliens, and so did Stalin. Not even necessarily children, but deformed adults. Or dwarves, even, maybe. Yeah, but let's not fall for false dichotomies. There could have been a whole bunch of weird stuff going on simultaneously. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't put it past any governments to do that, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing they were doing. And of course, yeah, his connections to John Lear. I'm just getting through your comments on Iwan's Cat. Did you hear that Lear said that Lazar was selected to do a soft disclosure? Lazar knew Lear before his S4 hire, and they had to know he would tell Lear what he knew. I'm not 100% sure about their timeline. It's very sketchy. I did two episodes on John Lear. John Lear is as sketchy as you can get himself. So I'm not 100% sure they knew each other beforehand. I think they might have been communicating on BBS boards, like those old BBS internet boards. Possibly prior to meeting in person. I don't know the exact timeline. I think it's very difficult to verify. Boggin says, please do a Flat Earth Q&A soon. Yeah, we could do that. But, okay, so how come nobody's talking about Bob Lazar's sister? I mean, I'm trying to find verification of her existence, and I can't. But Rothberg supposedly was a real childhood friend, and he's not backing up Lazar in any real way. He just gave some anecdotes about how they played around, worked with fireworks and stuff, and that he was kind of self-taught about everything. That's what he said. He also confirmed that Lazar did indeed build a rocket bike, which again doesn't need confirmation. I mean, this was featured in a local news story, so it's well established. Lazar's invention's well established, but Rothberg did back it up. So, pretty interesting stuff on the kind of stuff Lazar was into. But his sister, I can't... Why is it so difficult to verify a lot of Lazar's backstory here? I mean, Lazar is clearly a smart guy. But it's just very difficult to verify this stuff. So, let's go a little bit more into his background here, though, with Carol. So, yeah, this is really tough. There was also Eugene Gulhareff, and Eugene built and sold engines. He met Bob in the late 70s, and they built engines together and made some modifications for go-karts, etc. Also, you know what's curious? Bob Lazar actually had a photo shop, a storefront that processed photography in Los Alamos. He actually had a business that processed photographs in Los Alamos, and Alan Rothberg confirmed that. So in 1976, Lazar relocated with his parents to California and enrolled at Pierce Junior College. So apparently that's confirmed. He began working at Fairchild Zincom, a manufacturer of equipment used to test bubble memory devices, a new kind of computer memory. So two of Bob's former co-workers were interviewed, Gary Fosberg and another who only gave his first name and an initial, so Peter G. For some reason, he didn't want his name known. So Gary Fosberg confirmed that the company was originally Zincom, then it was bought up by Fairchild, and that Lazar did drive this souped-up car that he had 6,000 pounds of thrust. That's crazy. Okay. So he went, from there he went to Los Alamos, and they said that they stayed in touch with Lazar. He got sponsorship from a shock absorber company, because he could get 200 miles, he can get to 200 miles an hour in his jet car. And he would test track a freeway that hadn't been opened yet. Interesting. And that another friend drove Bob Lazar's hydrogen-powered Trans Am. That's interesting. So there are people that worked with him. Another curiosity is that Lazar had, there's a little story here about Lazar having a transcript from Nikola Tesla. And that he sold an engine to Borg Warner so they could launch drones and shoot them down. That's a weird anecdote. So Borg Warner is an American automotive and e-mobility supplier headquartered in Michigan. Interesting. Founded in 1880, revenue $14.2 billion in 2023. So these are the kind of contacts Lazar had. That's interesting. What's curious, though, Gary said that Gary went to Pierce College, but he never heard that Bob went to Pierce College, and that he didn't know that Lazar had gone there. Interesting. He's also saying that, like, because the author here is asking how Lazar made it to Los Alamos. Gary's theory is that when he sold the rights to his jet car, the jet engine, to Borg Warner, so they could test drones, the people in the government got, Lazar got their attention with this by selling his jet car to Borg Warner. And they hired him to take over rechargeable laser for defense purposes. That's curious. They hire Bob Lazar to work on lasers? I mean, wow. Is this entire reality scripted? Pinto Sack says, Lazarus said he was on local TV about his fancy car. I don't know about footage, but there's a bunch of articles in magazines and newspapers about Lazar's car. I mean, let me see if I can find actual video footage. Yeah, I don't know if there's actual footage, but there's a bunch of newspaper articles, and I think it was in a bunch of physics magazines as well. I mean, it was pretty well documented at the time, the Honda jet car here. And I'm assuming there was verified that he sold it, and that's how he got to Los Alamos. But let me just, let me put the receipts on the screen right now of just all the newspaper articles. I mean, I don't know if there's actual video footage, but there's a bunch of photographs of him testing it at the track. I'll put them on the screen in a second. You would think there would be some kind of video footage, but oh well, hold on. Hold on. Let me see here. No footage. Just photographs. Alright, here they come. Here's Lazar's jet car receipts. And these were all published at the time. So, I mean, it was kind of well known, and then, I mean, well known within the area, not well known outside of the area. But I mean, it was pretty well documented in magazines and newspapers. So, I don't know if anybody actually searched the, if there was a record of the contract. I mean, I'm sure it's all private records. Possibly even NDAs about the exact selling of this technology. But there's no shortage of receipts for this. So as you can see here, I mean, this is 1982, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I mean, there's tons of articles in newspapers and magazines and photos of the jet car. So, I mean, this is pretty well documented. Pretty well documented. Iron's Cat says, I thought Lazar was working at Los Alamos when he made it and said, so I think there might have been more than one. So I don't know at which point he sold it, and even if he sold the technology, I don't know if it was an exclusive, he'd still have the car and he'd still be making modifications to it. So unless there was more than one car, there might have been more than one car. I mean, it looks like there might have been more than one car. Supposedly it was a custom modified engine with this other individual. I just read his name. Where was it here? Eugene Golharov. So Eugene built and sold engines. And supposedly he became friends with Lazar, and they built custom modified engines. And UnitedNuclear.com, which is Gluharf's jet engine website, you could still buy it. It says you could still buy it. I don't know if they're still shipping them out. But the United Nuclear, that was the company, and him and Lazar made these custom engines. But anyway, so his co-workers are saying they believe he's lying about his education, but they don't know for sure. So now here's where it gets weird. So Bob Lazar and his first wife get married in 1980, July 27th. According to Carol's family, they met while working together at Fairchild. So here's the receipt here. So this is his first wife. Look at Bobby there. Look at Bobby Lazar there. Rocking quite the dapper getup here. Look at Bobby Lazar here. Pinto Sack says, nerd alert. Sphinx Bear says, sweet vest. I didn't know we'd be talking about Lazar this long, but this is kind of fascinating because nobody really digs deep into his background before he gets to Los Alamos. So what's curious, check out this receipt right here. Someone actually dug up their marriage certificate. I mean, there's some sleuths out there. And the name she gives is Carol Nadine Strong. So she's using an alias. So an alias is on their marriage certificate. I mean, this is wild stuff. So there are no other records of Carol Nadine Strong, just this marriage certificate where she's using an alias. I mean, this is quite the background. So what's curious here, so on bride personal data, the name of the father of the bride is Harold Strong. But on her death certificate, it's Harold Asher. And look at these receipts. They actually found her death certificate here. And this is Carol Lazar, and her father is now listed as Harold Asher instead of Harold Strong, her alias. Now, what's curious is someone actually did find her birth certificate, and it is indeed Carol Asher. So Strong was just an alias she used on her birth certificate. This is Carol Nadine Asher. Harold Asher as the father. So why was she using an alias? Now what's curious is there's a third surname, which is Eslinger. So during Bob Lazar's 1990 pandering case, Carol was listed as Carol Eslinger. I mean, that's kind of weird. This was a pre-sentence investigation report. So check this out. Somebody even found the 1990 pre-sentencing report, the official court document here. And Carol is listed as Eslinger here. So this is curious. So Bob Lazar, 2 wives, a third common law relationship here. I mean, that's kind of weird. Huh. This is pretty strange. I mean, Bob Lazar's marital history is shadier than his time than his time at S4. I mean, what? Pinto Sack says this is just as sketchy as Obama's birth certificate. I mean, this is sketchier. Lazar's marital history is sketchier than his working for the government reverse engineering UFO history. I mean, this is crazy stuff here. So apparently he was the one who provided the name Carol Eslinger in his interview, in Lazar's interview. How many names did this woman have? So apparently there is a directory from 1970 San Jose where there's a listing for Fred and Carol Eslinger. Carol did have a daughter, and she said that her mother had a boyfriend named Freddie Bangert. That's an interesting name. Freddie Bangert and Carol Asher both used aliases. The Eslinger name came from Freddie's aunt, so they both used the name for a while. So how many fake identities did Lazar's wife have? Lazar's first wife. She had at least 2 aliases? So here's where it gets really crazy. Carol Nadine Esslinger, one of the aliases, is actually cited in an article here about a Hell's Angel slaying. 32-year-old Carol Nadine Esslinger was sentenced to state prison for her role in the murder of a San Jose man who was apparently stabbed and gunned down by a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang and his wife. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Bob Lazar's first wife is involved in Hells Angels slayings? What is going on here? What is going on? So apparently Carol and 2 of her associates, Gary Burkett, a member of the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, and Gary's wife, Victoria, entered the home of Dennis Pissarro on June 12, 1974. Mr. Pissarro and Mrs. Burkett had allegedly gotten into a violent argument a few weeks prior. According to testimony presented in court, the 3 individuals armed with pistols entered the house. Carol held a guest of Pissarro's, Eugene Day, at gunpoint in an adjacent room while the other 2 stabbed and shot Mr. Pissarro to death. Day heard the sound of gunfire and saw blood spatter. After Pissarro had been killed, the attackers handcuffed Day to a shelf bracket and handed him a syringe, which he was told contained a solution that would incapacitate him. The attackers ordered Day to inject himself with the solution so they could escape. Day, however, managed to inject only a small amount, squirting the rest of the solution into the floor. The arm that was injected later required surgery to repair the damage the caustic solution had caused. At some point, Day was able to throw a wall plaque at Carol and escape to a neighbor's house where he contacted authorities. I mean, how does that work? Is his Hells Angels credentials damaged? Is his Hells Angel cred damaged because he needs to escape from a woman and call the popo from the neighbor's house? I mean, how did this Hells Angels live that down? I mean, what happened to his cred? Oh, wait a second. Day might have not been a Hells Angel. Day is a guest of Pissarro's. So Eugene Day may not have been a Hells Angel, but he was a guest of the Hells Angel in the Hells Angels home. So he may or may not have been a Hells Angel himself. If he was, I don't know how he lived that down. So June 13th, 1974, the day after Pissarro's murder, a routine tow truck call led to Carol's arrest, led to her second arrest. So this story is also kind of bizarre. Here's the receipt here. This is June 14th, 1974. This is in Yuba City. So Carol and a 15-year-old boy had become stuck in a riverbed in her car and required a tow truck. So why is a 32-year-old woman hanging out with a 15-year-old boy? That's another curiosity. So the tow truck arrived. The car was towed to a nearby shop for repairs. However, when the tow truck driver arrived at the shop, Carol and the boy had fallen asleep in the truck. Sensing that something was amiss, the truck driver called the police. What was amiss? What was amiss? Like, how did he know that 15-year-old boy wasn't her son? Maybe it was her son. They don't give a name here. Upon their arrival, the police officers awakened Carol and the boy and conducted a search of the car. During the search, they discovered amphetamine powder and tablets, as well as stolen goods. Both were promptly arrested and charged with possession of dangerous drugs and possession of property with altered serial numbers. So who's this 15-year-old? It looks like they never gave his name. Oh, probably because he's a minor? Yeah, that's weird. Is he a relative of hers, or is it something far more nefarious? 1974, July 18th, Carol was arrested for involvement in Pissaro's death, charged with second-degree murder, conspiracy, and false imprisonment. After an initial not guilty plea, she eventually pled guilty to the second-degree murder charge. So again, we're going over Bob Lazar's first wife. She was March 12, 75. She was sentenced to prison in Frontera, a women's correctional institution located in Chino. The length of her sentence was not reported. And it's not documented here how many years she served. But the earliest potential date of release would have been November 77. So how the heck did she end up working at Fairchild and being a co-worker of Bob Lazar? I mean, that's kind of weird. Carol's life was shaped by a variety of challenges, including early exposure to drugs and crime, a lifelong addiction to amphetamines, and several pregnancies, all of which she put up for adoption. 3 of her family members were interviewed about her life and marriage to Lazar. Susan Hack, that's an interesting name, one of Carol's adopted out daughters, Don Lehehan, Carol's cousin, and Renee Wakefield, another cousin. So what's curious is that her daughter Susan Hack with two A's said that in 1992 she started looking for her natural mother when she was 38 years of age. She hired an adoption search group. Eventually, she found Carol's cousin and okay. Eventually, Bob Lazar called her. So Bob Lazar didn't tell me much other than she had killed herself. So that's Lazar's story. Some people believe Lazar may have been involved. What's weird is he made mention of the fact that him and I were the same age. He sent me a videotape of Carol and him and sent me some pictures. Wait, what? Him and I? So Carol's husband is the same age as Carol's daughter? What? That's weird. So Bob Lazar sent her a lot of pictures. She said, I still didn't feel like I had a complete story, so I knew where I came from, and I knew her name, and I knew that she was dead, and she'd been married to this guy named Bob Lazar, who seemed pretty strange to me. So I started doing research on my own, and found why Bob Lazar was semi-famous. I think we had 1 or 2 conversations after that. He was surprised that I had come looking because he didn't think Carol had any kids. She told him she didn't have any kids. See, I wonder, was she some kind of handler? Did she make some kind of deal in prison to become Lazar's handler, and they placed her in Lazar's workplace? Again, I'm not claiming that's true, but it's kind of weird. So eventually, Ancestry came along. I found 4 other siblings. I also found out that Carol had 6 kids between 59 and 68. Carol had an older brother named Jimmy. So Carol, Jimmy, and Dean all ran around together. Dean was part of a motorcycle gang, a rather notorious one. So Carol had many boyfriends that were friends of Dean's. Her brother Jimmy tried to integrate himself, but he was kind of not allowed into things. He was seen as somebody that just couldn't run with them. But Carol and Dean ran around together through their teenage years until she married Lazar. Dean didn't know anything about Carol past Lazar, except for one time she came to visit with Bob Lazar. Dean recollected the visit was strange, but Carol, according to what Dean told me, was pregnant many times. She used drugs through most of her pregnancies. That's dark. I was the second child she gave up for adoption. Dean couldn't remember exactly who my father was because Carol had quite a few boyfriends. But she seemed to me from the picture Dean painted, as a pretty happy-go-lucky person without any responsibilities. As I learned more about her, and as Dean came clean about more things, I realized that she had a rather sad childhood. Not a lot of parental guidance. And because of the way her mother was, I felt that's the reason she turned out the way she was. Not motherly material, and not somebody that wanted to be bound by responsibility. I eventually made contact with the other person, Renee Wakefield, after I got to know Dean a bit. Renee told me that when she was younger, all the women, the parents, as in Carol's mother, her name was Verda. They called her Scotty, and there was 3 other sisters. All of them used Benzedrine pills. That's what a doctor prescribed. They called them mini whites in those days. That all the older generation women used them. So she wasn't surprised when Carol started using them. From the things I learned, I wouldn't say Carol's drug history started before 59 because I was born in 59. And from my own walk of life, I feel I was probably born addicted to amphetamine. From what my adoptive mother tells me about temperamental and how I was as a baby, I eventually knowing things myself about substance abuse, I felt like I probably had been born addicted. And then learning from Dean and Renee about all the rampant methamphetamine use confirmed that to me, so I think she started using before 59. I think she probably used methamphetamine, which is really the same thing as Benzedrine. Alright, so now the motorcycle group that I was speaking of was notorious for using crank. They controlled the crank in San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles, where I was from, in Oakland, where the motorcycle gang originated. It's a big thing amongst that group, and from the people that I talked to, and at one point I also talked to the ex-wife of Jimmy Asher, and I can't remember her name, but she told me they were all addicted to crank. And that one time she went with Jimmy over to Carol's house. Carol lived with a biker, and Jimmy and his wife scored some crank from them. She recollected that Carol answered the door in her underwear with a blanket of sorts wrapped around herself, let them in, gave them a powdered substance in a baggie, and they left. They recollected that Carol was mean, and no niceties were exchanged. She basically just let them in, grumbled a bit, handed them something, the baggie. So going back to, I believe she started before 59, I don't know if that carried on when she was with Lazar or not. I know that it carried on all through her closeness with Dean, but once again, Dean and Carol kind of went their separate ways when she married Bob Lazar. Did Dean tell you anything about the recollections of Bob? Yes, Dean said that when Carol showed up with Bob, he was surprised because Bob was not Carol's usual type. So she goes from Hell's Angels bikers to Nerd Alert? He had already told me that she hung around with and had friends and boyfriends that were bikers. And he said when she showed up with Lazar, he was surprised. And I believe Bob Lazar was sort of the butt of family jokes because he was thought of as a geek. A geek? Really? Really? I mean, look at this dapper individual here. So apparently she's quite a bit older than he is because he's the age of her daughter. Who thinks that's kind of weird? I mean, this whole story doesn't make any sense. Is anybody else having trouble following here? How does this woman get a job at a tech company with her criminal history? Welcome, Duncan Felonies. Sphinx Bear asks, was Carol the one involved in the Hells Angels situation? Yes, we're talking about her this entire time. I mean, this whole story's just weird. Did he have any specific memories about meeting Bob? He just said that he felt the guy overstepped, that he was asked too many questions and he was too inquisitive. He said that he was uncomfortable with him. Okay, so here's... Okay, who's ready for another mind shock here? This is unbelievable. Man. So here... So Carol's daughter said that Bob Lazar called her pretty quickly after her conversation with Knapp where she passed along her number. This is what she said about Lazar. I found him to be talkative and almost jovial. He said at one point, once he knew the date I was born, he said, "Oh, isn't that funny? I was born the same date as you, and technically I'm your stepfather. Ha ha ha." So Carol marries a man who is not only the same age as her daughter, but has the same birthday? What is going on here? The coincidence stack is so far beyond stratospheric at this point. I mean, I'm about to be out here. I'm about to be out. So it's not only the 1/365th chance for the exact for which day of the year, but the same exact year. I mean, the odds. What are the odds? So Carol's daughter says here, I thought it was weird that he was making light of this and I wanted details. He didn't give me any details other than to say that she asphyxiated herself in the race car that he had built for her. He did talk about the race car. He talked about them racing cars, I think it was. I don't know exactly where it was made. Maybe Utah, somewhere they would race the cars. And he got notoriety from the car that he built. So he's saying she committed suicide in his race car. He built it to run on jet fuel so it could go very fast. The police were always harassing him, so they would go somewhere out in the desert to race the car. He said Carol had wanted the car, and because he had the knowledge of how to build it, he had turned her old Honda into a race car. So he shared that with me. He said that he had the video of her, some pictures. He said he had some print books that she liked, art books, and so he offered to send those things to me. And she said she did get those things in the mail and the videotape. So I had more questions after we hung up weeks or months later because he was the last person that had contact with my mom and I just didn't feel like I knew everything. So this is just the gut instinct of her daughter here. I called him back and wasn't able to reach him, so I called George Knapp back, and George Knapp said, I have nothing more to talk about with you, and I'll give Bob a message. And Bob never called. George Knapp, I should add here, George Knapp seemed a lot different in this conversation than he had in the initial. In the initial conversation, he was more welcoming. In the second conversation, he seemed very guarded. Interesting. So I wonder what Bob Lazar told him. It gets a little crazier. So apparently, this is weird. There's another confirmation here of Lazar's connection to Richard Hatch. So Don Lenihan, Carol's cousin, also met Bob Lazar. They visited Clear Lake. Carol introduced him to Bob, and he thought Bob was actually a cool guy. And So Don actually went. He also confirmed that Lazar had the car that ran on hydrogen gas, liquid hydrogen. And he also said here that he went to their wedding in Woodland Hills, and that Richard Hatch from Battlestar Galactica was at their wedding. So that's curious. So here's another receipt. Here's another testimony about Richard Hatch, the lead in Battlestar Galactica, being at Lazar's wedding. So is that because Lazar's sister was there? Now, this guy doesn't make any mention of Lazar's sister. I mean, this is this is a lot more mind-shocking than I thought. Lord Zed says, all these fake alien story guys' wives go missing. Well, she didn't go missing. She allegedly committed suicide in his race car. And so he asked her about Carol's drug use. She asked if she was on amphetamines during the time she was with Bob Lazar. Don responded, yeah, I'm sure of that. Yeah. Renee Wakefield, Carol's other cousin, stated that Carol used heroin. However, the rest of the family who actually spent more time with Carol all stated that she did not use heroin. And Renee admits that she was never close to Carol. But she said she was close to Carol's mom, her Aunt Scotty. She estimates that Carol might have been in prison for about 8 years. She was asked how her and Bob Lazar met. Renee said, what was he? Here's this guy. I remember when we went to his house in 1980, March of 1980, they had built this laser cyber optic thing in their living room. And it seemed odd to me that someone like him would be with Carol. Carol's a freaking heroin addict, nasty, mean woman. Yeah, I'm sorry, but she was not nice. And she never had anything to be nice about. Did you get a feeling of how long they had been together? It felt like it was right around 1980. I had never heard of him before until I needed help in the Bay Area. We had a car trouble. We were stuck. We were just kids. I called home and my grandparents called Aunt Scotty and they got Carol's address and had us get a cab to Carol's to get help with the car and have a place to stay. They made it clear we weren't welcome and it didn't work out so good. But that was March 1980. That was the first time I ever met Bob in 1980 and I had never heard of him before. I think it had to be close to the time that Carol got out of prison because I never heard anything about Carol until then. Were they married at that point? I'm going to say yeah. Well, let's see if they were. What was the exact year? What's the exact year of the marriage certificate here? It was actually in that, the pre-sentencing. Was it in the pre-sentencing, possibly? Yeah, here we go. 1980. So, yeah, that would have been 1980. Okay. So this cousin might be approximately correct here. So she gets out of the prison and then she just immediately marries this guy. How did she get a job at this place? I mean, this is weird. So I'm gonna say yeah, they had. I'm gonna say they were. So I remember they were for about 30 minutes and they were working. What they told us, they had this big video screen going. Bob was working on a video with Blondie, Debbie Harry. And that he was doing that, and they were living together. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure they're mad. Okay, so here's another receipt. Here's a receipt from Carol's cousin saying that Bob Lazar was working on a video with Blondie. Now, just because they have a huge video screen and they have Blondie footage, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's working on it, but maybe. Do you remember any other details? That's the only thing. They told me that they had just left doing a video for Blondie, and they had it playing in their big screen in their living room that was up on the wall. Both of them were saying this. They were both in the living room. Carol's the one who was talking about it. I don't remember Bob saying much of anything. The Blondie thing, I don't know if that was true or not. That maybe just, Carol seemed pretty... I remember thinking this is the oddest thing ever. What the hell? Here's Carol in this big, beautiful house with a guy who can build fiber optics, and they're doing videos of Blondie. How the hell did this happen?